What is the Achilles heel of economic globalization?
The Achilles heel of economic globalization is that it is an approach which is only able to function because of cheap energy and cheap fossil fuel energy, and that nobody has yet managed to decouple economic growth and economic globalization from a growth in carbon emissions. And the climate scientists who I talk to say we need, if we want to stay below 2 degrees, and even 2 degrees is too high, we haven't even gone up 1 degree yet and we see all kinds of difficulties, then we need to start to cut emissions now 10% a year. That goes far beyond the idea of more efficient cars and different light bulbs. That's a rethink of the scale on which we do things. And if we take that as being the challenge, then we can either look at that as a disaster and a crisis and oh my God, we're letting go of something that's completely irreplaceable, or we look at that as a historic opportunity to rethink many of the basic assumptions on which we do things, the scales on which we do things. And I don't see any way that you can address that question without assuming that globalization as we see it now is an idea that's it's last century's idea. The idea for this century is how we bring things closer to home, how we're able to live more with the seasons, reduce the level of consumption, consume things which are going to last longer, which are better made, and which are made more locally. And so for me, that's really the Achilles heel of globalization.
You really think that the age of cheap oil is over?
I don't think there's any doubt that the age of cheap energy is over. The oil price has been around or above $100 a barrel consistently now for some time, and that's the floor price. It's not going to go back down again. And many of the things that are presented to us as being the new golden age, the exciting new breakthrough golden age of fossil fuels, the tar sands, the fracked gas, and so on, are really the retirement party of fossil fuels. You know, they're not. Will they enable us to cover the losses of the existing oil fields that are declining? I really don't think so. And for me, the degree to which we remain dependent on cheap energy is the Achilles heel, is the key vulnerability of our economies, and we really have to break that dependency, that addiction, as soon as we can.
All the goods we are using right now are all based on fossil fuels.
Yeah, if you walk around most people's homes, you find the toothbrushes, all the appliances, the electrical goods, the medicines, everything has involved oil in some ways. You know, and I see sometimes with my children, you have a toy, somehow you've had this oil in Saudi Arabia, extracted from an oil field, put through a refinery, put through another refining process to turn it into some sort of plastic, taken to a factory, turned into this toy, driven to a distribution centre, driven to the shop, taken home, it breaks after 3 days and you throw it in the dustbin. You know, I mean, what kind of an economic model is that? And that way that cheap energy, cheap oil, has flooded our life with goods, and it's been extraordinary as well. You know, I mean, we have opportunities and access to things that previous generations could only dream of. You know, and I think it's really important to honour that and acknowledge that. We've been incredibly fortunate to live through the oil age that's given us so much and opened so many opportunities. But at the same time, when you can see that something is drawing to a close, we really have a responsibility to look beyond to what we do next. It's really important that we take a proactive rather than a reactive response, because the need for a post-growth, post-fossil fuel economy is huge, but it's not going to happen by accident. But it's inevitable that will happen. But the degree to which we've started to prepare for it, it will massively increase our chances of it being successful. If we just wait until we get there and then we sort of try and figure it out when we get there, we'll have lost all that time that we could have been planning and getting things ready. You know, one of the things, you know, we use this term resilience a lot when we talk about transition, and often it's seen as being about designing ability to withstand shock and all that. For me, actually, from seeing transition here for many years, it's about possibility, and it's about the degree to which you're able to breathe possibility into a community, so that when it encounters shock, it feels it has possibilities at its fingertips, it has options, things that it could do. And that needs to happen as a proactive thing. That needs to start in advance. And building that infrastructure needs to start now. For me, I think one of the key ideas is of community resilience as a form of economic development. And that means community resilience, whether it's in terms of having a more resilient food system, whether it's having a more resilient energy system, whether it's our education system really being designed to produce young people who have the skills and the imagination to be more resilient, whether it's having a local economy that's really framed about resilience. All of those things we can really see as an opportunity for entrepreneurship and economic activity, creating a new economy that sits alongside and then replaces the old one. If you're looking at creating more resilient local economies, you can have a community energy company, you can have a community bakery, you can have a community farm, you can have all those ingredients in place. But you can't create those from the top. Those have to be created and led and owned by local people. And what really gives a place its resilience is all the connections that you make between those things. The Amazon rainforest isn't a resilient system because it's got lots of different species in it. It's resilient because of all the relationships and connections between those different species. So when we're trying to replicate that in our economies here, you need something that's weaving the picture together, making all of those connections. And that's something that transition groups do very, very beautifully, I think.
That means that this transition process should be bottom up rather than top down.
Transition has always been designed from the very beginning to be a process that is led by communities, because communities can do things that top-down responses just simply can't do. And that, I think, is, we've always said that the role of local government is to support transition, but not to drive it. And so for me, I think what we've developed in transition is a series of tools and a series of approaches that really show the potential of what you can do at the local level. You can't do everything, but you can do a hell of a lot. If you have the tools to unlock the creative genius of the people, the community around you, you can achieve really quite extraordinary things. Things that national government wouldn't even imagine, never mind do. And that's the real power of this approach, I think.
But how do you explain the inertia of politicians?
Because we aren't governed by politicians anymore. We're governed by corporations. The idea that we live in a democratic country where our politicians run the country isn't the case anymore. We live in a corporatocracy really now, rather than a democracy. And but the beauty of a corporatocracy is that those corporations only exist because we buy what they sell. They only exist because we give them our support. And if we withdraw our support and we move it into the kind of resilient, more local economy that we want to see, if we stop buying from Amazon and we stop buying from Tesco and we stop buying from Walmart and so on and so on and so on and so on, and we're able to shift that into the new economy that we're creating, then we really take the power back again. So the idea that our politicians are going to be able to do a great deal, I think is kind of naive. But the amount of power that we have as communities is huge, and we don't realise it. And I think that's what really excites me about what we see in transition.
You think it's too late?
Whenever I get asked that question, is it too late? Which is similar to the question, are you an optimist or are you a pessimist? I always quote Paul Hawken, because I think he put it far better than anybody else. He said, if you read the science about climate change and about the state of the planet, and you're not a pessimist, you haven't read it properly. Go back and read it again. I approach this work with no attachment to the outcome. I approach this work because it is the most skillful, the most human, the most important stuff that I can be doing with my life. I do this work because I have children, and I can see in their eyes the generation that will come after them, and I don't want to be able to say to my children in 20 years' time, in that window of opportunity when we could have turned it around, I didn't do anything about it. I didn't do enough. And for me, what matters is that I can have that conversation, and I can say I did everything I possibly could. I put all my energy into making that happen. I applied my creativity, my thinking, my energy and my power into trying to make that happen. And I hope that they'll be able to say, thank you, that worked. Because in the time that we have available, if we're able to turn it around, it would be an astonishing achievement. But people have achieved astonishing things in the past. And my sense is that if we're able to do that, that those future generations, those grandchildren of ours, will tell great tales about what we did and sing great songs about what we did. And I really hope that I'm there to hear those.